This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hi, everybody. Welcome into the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. We have another episode queued up for you. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are sports reporters in Syracuse, New York. Let's just get to the elephant in the room. We are essentially wearing the same outfit today.
Right.
But there's a reason for that.
Right, there was a photo shoot completely on our own accord. You know, we're going to the Holiday Bowl to cover Syracuse football in San Diego. So we will not have an episode next week. Just putting that out there now. Happy holidays to all who celebrate. But yeah, we took it upon ourselves to just, you know, have a little photo shoot. So we had to match, obviously.
Of course we had to match because we're just dramatic like that. It wouldn't look good if it wasn't matching.
Imagine the promo team at our station when we're like, we need to have a photo shoot. Why? Just so that we can announce that we're going to the bowl game. Okay.
One thing I will say about Ashley and I, we love a good announcement. Anything is a good opportunity for an announcement.
Personal news.
Yeah.
Breaking.
Exactly. But we're here. We want to talk about the Mets and baseball and the happenings. As Ashley said, happy holidays to all if we don't get to hear from you guys again until after the holiday season. And speaking of gifts and gift giving, Soto was with the Mets, and now we're continuing to talk about what has happened in the days since then and all of the things that we found out. One thing just right off the bat here, Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen. He said, I want to thank Mets fans for responding to the Soto signing. Ticket sales exploded this week versus last week. We were 18th in MLB attendance last year. Any predictions where we end up signing this year? I couldn't believe they were 18th last year.
I was just going to say that. I was a little surprised to hear the Mets were 18th. I mean, I don't know, biggest market in the country, New York. That's a little tough. I'm not going to lie, Stevie.
Kind of low.
Kind of low, especially for what went on last year at the end, down the stretch. Kind of low.
I agree. So we'll see what happens with that. But also, we haven't discussed this since the last time we saw you. Juan Soto did have his introductory press conference. It happened last week. He was introduced as a Met. He put on the jersey. Everybody spoke about it, including his agent, Scott Boras, including Steve Cohen, and of course, Juan Soto. Couple different things that he hit on there, but the two big things were the winning culture and family and how much the Mets organization prioritized and valued not only the actual organization as a family, but also what they could do for Juan Soto's family specifically. What stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it becomes clearer and clearer as more of this story comes out, right? We've talked about it. We have really put it to bed, but whether or not he was going to take the highest offer, he did take the highest offer. We can admit that. He took the most money from the Mets, but family was something that was really important to him. You know, it's come out the Mets put aside 22 seats for 22 of his family members to match with his number at each Mets home game.
Adorable.
But here's something I found really interesting in the MLB.com article that Anthony Tacoma wrote about the press conference. He said, as far back as 14 months ago, when David Stearns was interviewing to become the Mets president of baseball operations, he had Juan Soto on his mind. Executives routinely attempt to forecast which players might be available. Soto, whom Stearns called a generational player, was the most prominent name that surfaced as Stearns and Steve Cohen talked hypothetical strategy. We did know that if he was going to be a free agent, Stearns said, we were going to make a very strong push. I mean, 14 months ago, when Stearns is interviewing for the job, that is intriguing to me, that this was somebody, you know, I think a lot of the media narrative, we touched on this last week, has been, oh, Steve Cohen just wanted to make the biggest splash, was going to write him the biggest check, and he did write him the biggest check, and I understand that. But the point is, they had their eyes on Soto for a long time, they had a target on him, and they knew that they wanted him, and they got what they wanted.
Yeah, that's amazing. This was planned, y'all. This was, everyone can talk about how things changed at the last minute, but as far as both sides, there was a lot going on here as far as these negotiations behind the scenes. Another thing that had come out of this whole thing was that Juan Soto said that he hadn't spoken to any of his former Yankee teammates since, I believe, the World Series.
Yeah.
But then that was clarified because at first you were sort of like, is there something bad between these two sides? I still find it to be a little odd. I'm honestly just going to say that.
It's tantalizing.
But Bob Nightingale of USA Today clarified, saying the reason there was no communication between Juan Soto and his former Yankee teammates simply is that Soto changed his cell phone number. He was bombarded by outside calls during his free agency and wanted privacy. He is now reaching out to former Yankee teammates. I get that, but let's not also act like he didn't do that because he intentionally wanted to block out the noise. Like, I could change my cell phone number tomorrow. I'd let you know what it was.
He had 2 phones. I mean, he had 2 phones. You either had the private number or you had the public number that everybody knew about.
Correct.
I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's true.
I'm sure it is.
It might be. Yeah, I think a lot came out about that, right? Whether that's negative on the Yankees end, but we spoke about this, right? Francisco Lindor was rumored to be in touch with him throughout the process. I just think if you're the Yankees and if you're Aaron Judge, what are we doing? What are we doing? You're letting your lover talk to other people.
Yep.
So that's what happened. I thought it was interesting. A Steve Cohen quote also at that press conference. He said, "One thing I learned a long time ago is if you want something that's amazing, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's never going to be comfortable." And so I always stretch a little bit because I know that's what it takes to get it done. I mean, no better person to take advice from than multi-billionaire Steve Cohen.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I know we discuss that like every week, but it's unbelievable how much money he has.
Yeah.
He obviously is a businessman at the core. He knows how to get deals like this done. Kind of in summary, because I'm sure we will obviously continue to talk about the impact of Juan Soto, but just when it comes to the signing, I'm pretty much going to die on the hill that he wasn't just a sellout. I really don't think this is just because he got the biggest offer. I never have, and I continue to not think that. I do think there was a lot more at play here. When he got up there, he spoke honestly, Soto this is, about the money. And yes, it will come. And yes, it changed things for his family. But like even when they were taking the picture, Soto was taking the picture with the jersey and the family is invited up. Like there were like members upon members, like his extended family. You could tell all of this is a part of it. And I think Steve Cohen was smartly decided I am going to start to include those perks. The only place where I honestly felt like, you know what, it would have been okay for there to be a pullback. I don't know what you think about this. Is like, honestly, if on the Yankees end, everyone else had paid for their suites, do I really think that he couldn't have paid for his own suite? I don't know. In a way, I feel like,
right.
At this point,
if Jeter's out there paying for his suite, Juan Soto, you might have to pay for your suite. This is something that I've been dying to get off my chest since this has come out. And every week that we've talked about this, I've forgotten to say it for some reason. Do I believe that Soto, right, you have the opt-out. So in a sense, we haven't touched on this. In a sense, with the opt-out at 5 years, if he stays, and then as the salary goes up, it gets up to over $800 million.
Yep.
I understand that. So yes, Steve Cohen did far and away. It wasn't just $5 million. If that opt-out is not exercised, he far and away outbid everyone. And I understand that. I think 2 things can be true. I think Soto liked that the Mets were the highest offer by a lot. And I also agree with you that they made his family feel the most comfortable, feel the most welcome. We've talked about the show that Steve Cohen put on at his home with Soto's family, the whole 9 yards. But what I think is really in play here that no one is talking about, everybody's like, oh, this contract's so bad, the Mets are going to regret it in a few years, complete overpay, yada, yada, yada. That might be true. But this opt-out after 5 years could easily be exercised on Soto's end. And so then he opts out after 5 years. You haven't paid him near the total of the contract, $765 million, and you just got 5 years of Juan Soto in his prime. What, he'll be 31? You just got probably the best years of his career, and then you don't have to deal with the rest of it. I'm not saying I hope he opts out after 5 years. Obviously, I hope he's a Met for the entire duration of the contract. But if he does, Steve Cohen looks like a genius. Masterclass.
Yeah, I think Steve Cohen is always out here playing chess. Not everybody is going to have the vision to realize that. I still think this was a good call. Like when you say 2 things can be true, what comes to my mind is it was an overpay, but it was still a good deal and it was still a good signing.
It was a luxury brand that you deserve to pay the price for.
If y'all were here last week, you understand where we're coming from with that. Last but not least, I feel like you included David Ortiz's comment here because this meant a lot to you.
It meant a lot to me. David Ortiz commented on Juan Soto's Instagram reel announcing that he went to the Mets with, his saying that he always says on Sunday Night Baseball, where he goes, duh, Yankees lose. That's so funny. That is so funny. Because the Yankees lost. I know David Ortiz rejoiced that Juan Soto didn't pick the Yankees. I know he did.
Yeah, he did. He honestly is just good TV. Just a sidebar for a minute. David Ortiz, like whatever you're paying him, pay him more, man.
David Ortiz is phenomenal TV. Pair him with A-Rod and pair him with Derek Jeter. And I'm actually going to say something. Out of those 3, and I don't really support a lot of things A-Rod's done in his life, nor his Yankees career. A-Rod has some decent insight at times. Jeter, a little dry, but I don't know how I feel about Jeter on that. David Ortiz just paired with those 2. Whoever paid the money at ESPN to make that be the combo, combined with Kevin Burkhardt, by the way, who used to be the Mets sideline reporter. That was a career trajectory that was crazy.
I'll say.
Anyways, that little trio is just great TV.
Kevin Burkhardt, by the way, car salesman in his 30s. That's where it all started.
Kevin Burkhardt,
unreal.
Really, age is just a number for Kevin Burkhardt. It's never too late when you think about Kevin Burkhardt.
If you guys don't know Kevin Burkhardt's story, like Mets fan or not, just look up how insane that was. Because I'm telling you, it was something like within the span of a few years.
Yeah.
He went from like part-time radio and car salesman to calling a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember being devastated as a kid when Kevin Burkhardt left SNY and Steve Gelbs came in and took a spot. Now, obviously, we love Steve. It's been many years.
Of course we love
But
Steve.
I was devastated. My dad was like, I don't think you understand. He's literally going to Fox, I believe, to call the Super Bowl and Monday Night Football and all that crazy stuff. Insane.
Unbelievable. Okay, that's our Juan Soto segment for the day. We're going to move on here. The Yankees did catch a win recently. They signed Max Fried. I thought so.
Was it?
I thought so. They signed Max Fried to an 8-year, $218 million contract. Evidently, hearing now for the first time, Ashley thinks that was a loss.
All right, listen. I mean, Fried is 31, right? He's finished top 5 in Cy Young voting many of the last few years. You can't really argue with it. He's an ace. The Yankees needed an ace. I got it. Largest guarantee in baseball history for a left-handed pitcher. But boy, oh boy, have I seen this movie before. Starting with the New York Mets. We gave him 8 years. He's 31 years old. What do you mean we gave him 8 years and $218 million? I'm not saying he's not worth the money. I'm not saying he's worth the length. I just think
What would you have preferred? Like, what would you have preferred to see years-wise, numbers-wise?
I mean, I hesitate to ever give pitchers like an 8-year situation. For a pitcher, that is, especially a pitcher over 30, what are we doing? That is very
enough.
risky. The shelf life there is just not what I need it to be. But I think it's textbook from the Yankees a few days after they miss out on Soto. I mean, how many times did we see the Mets do that in the early 2000s or other times in Mets history? All right, they miss out on the biggest fish, so they go get a big fish, but then you overpaid for the big fish. And you know
Right.
what? You did it to shut your fan base up. And it did shut your fan base up. And it is a high caliber, lofty, good signing in many senses. I mean, you want to talk about an overpay.
As a Yankees fan,
Jeez.
now all of a sudden she's cheap. She's not going for the luxury brand anymore.
No.
No, honestly, I do agree that a part of this was just it was like a PR crisis situation.
Oh, PR nightmare the Yankees were dealing with.
PR nightmare. Like even
Disaster class.
from the social media team to the it's like what do you do?
Right.
What do you honestly do to come back from this? It's going to take a while.
You have to throw something at the problem.
And this is what they decided to do. Better than nothing.
Yeah.
I think. But I hear where you're coming from with that. I could see how 8 years is a little lengthy.
I don't even think I'm mad at the money. I'm mad at the 8 years. Like that's kind of egregious.
That's fair. I understand that. So we'll have to see what happens. I know that some Yankees fans were excited by this move and were happy just to see the Yankees do something. But whether or not he'll actually, be helpful for 8 years remains to be seen. I guess come talk to us 8 years from now if we still have this podcast.
Yankees fans were like shaking Hal Steinbrenner. They were like, do something.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. And I understand. Listen, we have said that from the start. I understand how annoyed, upset, frustrated Yankees fans must be because I've said this for months now. They made it to the World Series, but it just felt like they were a long, long road away from actually winning it. That's all.
And we know how that feels, right? We've been a Mets fan for a long time. We know how it feels to miss out on the big fish. So sorry if we're gloating a little too much.
Are you?
No.
Anyway, Pete Alonso, Sean Manaea, we wanted to discuss them as well. Are they coming back to the Mets? Are they not? Of course, you know how these things go in this sort of quote-unquote rumor stage where some people are saying some things, some people are saying other things. But we have a podcast, so let's just talk about what we think. What do you think?
I mean, they're playing the long game, evidently. Both of
Clearly.
these guys, Boris clients, which is interesting. I think that Boris just cut a big deal with the Mets, so you got to think that they're still in talks, obviously holiday weeks, but I don't think these things really die down around the holidays. Something that I found interesting, and do I think Steve Gelbs of SNY really has much insider information? Probably not.
Maybe some.
But he has some. And this week, he went on SNY and said, I'd lean to him not being back next year, speaking about Alonso. That's intriguing to me. Steve Gelbs might have heard some things.
That is interesting.
Some whispers.
Yes, I agree. Because I'll be honest, at this point in time, I would really just love a situation where Sean Manaea and actually Pete Alonso are brought back.
I
don't
agree.
know why. I admittedly have flip-flopped on that a few times. But now that I've sort of seen the market and I've seen who wants Pete Alonso and who doesn't and where he actually fits, I'm sort of in the bring him home camp.
So am I, and I moved over to that camp. I was not in that camp. But I told you last week, I looked at the Mets lineup. The Mets need another bat.
Y'all have room in that camp?
Yeah. I really think that I think that everybody's pretty much in agreement. The Mets need another bat behind Soto in that 4-5 spot, especially with some other the guys that have hit free agency. You know, you're not going to have JD Martinez back, obviously. We'll see what they do with some of the other guys. But, I mean, the Mets need another bat, and who better than Alonso? You have a guy that means a lot to the franchise, that most people in the franchise really love and support. Bring back Alonso. I know they're waiting for the price to be right. The question is the price ever going to be right? I don't know. I mean, somebody's got to blink.
And somebody is going to, like, this might be one of those things where you're seeing the long game being played, because honestly, if I was Pete Alonso, I might be looking around at some of the suitors and people who actually reached out to me and feeling like, you know what, I actually do want to end up back at the Mets, because it's sort of been womp, womp, womp feeling for him, I think.
Like, if you're Pete Alonso, and this is just completely hypothetical, I don't know what other teams have reached out to Pete Alonso, but, like, if you're Pete Alonso, it's like, you want to go to, like, Milwaukee? Like, or do we want to stay in New York with the team and the fan base that loves us?
There are times where they're introducing all of the candidates on a season of The Bachelorette or The Bachelor, and you're just looking at all the contestants and you're thinking, like, maybe I should have just stuck with my girlfriend.
Right. Like
just
right.
Not
Cut my losses. Grass is always greener till it isn't, you know?
Until it isn't. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. And really the question becomes, if not Pete Alonso, then who? And you have something interesting written down about that.
I do. And I also, my last beat on the Alonso thing is, I honestly, with the way it's playing out in this early stages of the market, I honestly could kind of see this being a, maybe not as dramatic as JD Martinez last year free agency situation, but I could see this being something that takes until January, February. I think Alonso's going to wait until he finds something that he likes. Jeff Passan said last week, the perception of the market regarding Alonso is that there is not much of one. So
like, that hurt. That is tough. A knife.
That's a one-liner. For the
not
ages.
much.
Not
much of one.
Not much of a market. Tough.
Anyways,
yes. So Nolan Arenado. Interesting, intriguing. Nolan Arenado, obviously been a star for a long time at third base. For a long time with the Rockies, and then he moved over to the St. Louis Cardinals. He made headlines this week via MLB.com for saying that he would waive his no-trade clause for only a few teams, only 6 teams. Those teams are the Dodgers, the Padres, the Angels, the Phillies, Mets, or Red Sox. Even to see the Mets on that list is interesting. I'm sure every guy has their own personal preferences. You know who's not on that list? The Yankees. And
why, though? Like, why is that?
Right.
It does make you wonder. 6 teams, the Mets are one of them.
All big market teams, pretty much. Yeah.
And some of the teams he's listing are not even teams who last year made it as far as the Yankees.
Red Sox,
I mean, that's fascinating.
It is. So as a part of what Cardinals president of baseball operations called a reset for 25, the Cardinals are planning to trade him to lessen their financial responsibilities. And his agent informed the Cardinals that those would be the 6 teams that he would like to go to. He is trying to go to a winner. I mean, he said that he's been a third baseman. He said he'd be willing to play other positions if it helped to facilitate a trade to a World Series contender. He's owed $74 million over the next 3 seasons. He is 33, so definitely probably on the decline in his career. But
definitely probably,
you know, I don't know. But it's intriguing, right? Because if you're the Mets, you have Mark Vientos at third base right now. You had Pete Alonso at first base, right? Does Alonso eventually turn into a DH? Probably. You also don't really have a DH right now because JD Martinez isn't coming back. So if you're the Mets and you don't re-sign Alonso, or it's not the right price, or whatever might go on there's a world where you could move Mark Vientos to first base and put Nolan Arenado at third, or DH if that's your preference. But Mark Vientos, I think, could slide over to first base pretty easily.
100%. And perhaps we should think about a world where not only could he, but maybe he should.
Right.
He was good at third base, but like, it wasn't great. I mean,
right. Defensively, I mean, he held his own. I think it was actually better than some people anticipated on his rise up through the minors, but it certainly wasn't, Gold Glove caliber.
I thought like Iglesias did better job at times.
Arenado, by the way, a 10-time Gold Glove winner, I should mention.
That's sort of what I'm wanting. You always talk about feeling tantalized.
Yeah.
Tantalizing. Can it be both? Tantalized? Can you be tantalized?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would make me feel that way. I think that having someone at third base who has great defense, that would be tantalizing for me.
I would agree. Nolan Arenado, have to give a shout out to my father, longtime Mets fan, been on the podcast. He has been obsessed with Nolan Arenado since Nolan Arenado was in Colorado. My dad started buying Colorado Rockies jerseys because he was obsessed with Nolan Arenado. It was strange.
Really?
I'm not going to lie, that was a phase my dad went through. That was odd. But I know he loves Arenado. He just loved him. He loved to watch him hit. He loved that lineup that the Rockies had when it was like Arenado, Arenado. Who else was out there at the time? DJ LeMahieu, maybe was Todd Helton still there? I don't know. But he loves Nolan Arenado. And Nolan Arenado, I would like to say, has really been buried since he went over to St. Louis. Like, he was a star, not face of baseball level, but pretty well known. Since he's gone to the Cardinals, he just has fallen off. So I see your list here, Nolan. You're trying to go somewhere. You're trying to go to a big fish. I understand.
He wants to be a star. And perhaps if he comes to the Mets, a star is born.
But then you'd question, all right, so the Mets don't pay Alonso. Would you really want to make a trade for Arenado? You know, who would you want to give up? Why would you want to give up some prospects if you could just pay Alonso? That's another theory. All intriguing.
No, that actually is a very interesting, very quality point. That's the other, if I'm doing a little pros and cons list about Alonso, Venn diagram.
I love a good Venn diagram.
You and Kamala Harris, Venn diagrams, love them. No, honestly, I think that is the one big pro with someone like Pete Alonso, is that if you are able to re-sign him, now you don't need to give anybody up. And honestly, that's where all of a sudden I become very stingy.
Yeah.
Like, trades make me feel very anxious.
Oh.
And when they're like, oh, you're going to get this, but you need to give up X, Y, and Z, or certain prospects that maybe it's just because we're in Syracuse, I feel very latched onto. I'm like, no, you cannot take them. I will not stand for this.
I feel like there's certain prospects that their names are being thrown around, like, quite frequently. Brett Beatty among them. Jet Williams among them. Do you think Brett Beatty is going to be a Met in spring training 2025?
I don't know. That's such a good question. Yes.
I'm going to go no.
Okay. I like that, though. Sometimes it's good for us to split.
Yeah. I don't know why. I just have a feeling that I think he needs a change of scenery, to be honest. And I think of the prospects, I mean, this is a crowded infield. It's all, you know, like with Acuna, by the way, who we didn't even mention. That's why I put a bullet on here. Tearing it up in the Venezuelan Winter League. He's only played 32 games. He's hitting .337, 3 home runs, 17 RBI, 18 stolen bases. We know he can play second. He can play shortstop. He can play center field. The Mets infield getting a little crowded, especially if Alonso or Arenado were to be back.
And mind you, just to clarify, when I'm saying yes, I think he'll still be here, that's just my hunch and feeling.
Yeah.
Do I actually think the Mets still need him? No. Would I be sad to see him go? I'm not one of those people who is holding on for dear life to Brett Beatty. I really like him. I thought he was a nice guy. I definitely think he has potential. But to your point, like, I'm holding on to Acuna. Probably, a guy like Jet Williams, that is very intriguing to me. Brett Beatty, that could actually be a time and a place and a person where I'm like, you know what? Maybe you should trade him and get your money's worth for something else.
But at the same time, does Brett Beatty also give me visions of a classic Mets player who's going to go somewhere else and then kind of become a star? Is it giving Justin Turner a little bit? A little. But then you see the Mets, you see them do this, and this is every team in baseball, right? A guy that they love for a long time, Jared Kelenic, goes over to the Mariners, then the Braves, and he just hasn't panned out to anything. And Mets fans were appalled when they let him go. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. All right. Two other notes here. The Mets are officially retiring David Wright's number on July 19th at Citi Field. It's something that feels like probably should have happened already.
Right.
But we have long time discussed on this podcast how much we love and respect David Wright. Fun fact, it was Ashley's favorite Mets player.
Yes. David Wright got me into the Mets, as I feel like he probably did a lot of kids my age. They're doing it on July 19th, as you mentioned, 4:25 game against the Reds. A tantalizing rumor that I've heard that I want to bring up is, and this is completely social media rumors, I have no basis on this, but I just want to discuss it. What if they retire Wright's number, put it up in the rafters, number 5, and that is, or around that time, is when they officially, it's like a captain handing it off to the next captain, and they name Lindor captain?
I think that would be...
I'd cry. I mean...
one of the most beautiful moments in Major League Baseball history.
The screams that would be scrummed.
No, I mean, that day...
I'm actually almost tearing up just thinking about it. I don't know why.
Do we need to take a break for a minute?
No.
No, I totally agree. Man, that would be perfect. That would be beautiful. I hope that really does happen. I need that to have happened already, but I especially need it to happen now. Make him the damn captain. We've been through this. It's one of those missing pieces heading into the 2025 season that I'm like, come on, man. Let's do it.
And it's especially clear now that he's building that surrounding cast, right? You have Vientos, you have now Soto. If Alonso comes back, he's in that cast. Nimmo. Lindor's the captain. He has been. Give him the captain. Give him the C on his chest. I think David Wright would approve.
100. I know that he would.
Yeah.
Me knowing that because I know
You know,
David
me and
Wright and
David,
I'm
we're
friends
tight.
with him. Me and Dave. Davey. No, I agree, and it is sort of funny because people had mentioned with the whole Juan Soto thing. Well, maybe Soto just didn't want to be stuck in Judge's shadow because he's the captain or whatever. But I don't really think it's going to matter. I still think there's going to be room for both of them to be successful, and I would not be okay with at all anyone other than Lindor being the captain of the Mets. That's the only person who deserves it.
Me neither. They can be a dynamic duo.
That's fine.
Not like us.
Who doesn't love it? I was just about to say that. Damn it.
I have to point out Chipper Jones' reaction on Twitter. He said, truly deserved about Wright's number being retired. Whatever. Did I mention Brave Killer? Plus, he beats me regularly in fantasy football. Something really healed my childhood heart about hearing that Chipper Jones and David Wright continue to play in a fantasy football league. Who else is in that league? I mean, I have visions of Ryan Zimmerman, maybe the Upton brothers. Something about that fantasy football league, I need to know more.
Man, like that's just one of those you gotta love sports moments.
Love sports.
Speaking of that, here's our kicker for the day.
Oh, Dodgers fans.
Dodgers fans, we have something very interesting to discuss with all of y'all. The Dodgers sold Aaron Judge's dropped Game 5 fly ball in the World Series for $43,510 crisp dollar bills at an auction this weekend. Who paid it? Why did they pay for it? Was it out of spite? Had to be. Where's the money going?
The fact that this was the Dodgers, like the team, sold this at auction, that is expert level trolling. 10 out of 10 no notes. That's phenomenal.
Dude, that makes me like the Dodgers fan base even more. Skyrockets it.
Where's the money going? I don't care. That's incredible. Like, I hope it's going to charity or something. Don't get me wrong. But if it's not, I mean, that is just wow. Judge said after that Game 5, falling short in the World Series will stay with me until I die. Tough.
Honestly, what makes me feel more curious is, like, who paid for that?
Right.
Are we gonna, at some point, like, I feel like you didn't pay for that just to hide it in secrecy in your basement. I guess if you're super rich, why not? Like, but who paid for that? And are we going to see it surface again? Like, I was almost hoping that it was one of like the Barstool guys or something, so we could see it and everybody would make fun of it. Like, does Steve Cohen have it? And it's just like sitting in his basement.
Stevie bought it.
I don't know.
I mean, some Dodgers fan, some expert level troll Dodgers fan is getting a $43,000 baseball this holiday season as their gift, and that's just excellent. It really is.
It's excellent. And then here's the other thing: the Freddie Freeman Game 1 walk-off grand slam ball sold for $1.56 million. That's a steep ball.
That's a lot of dollar bills.
that is life-changing money for one lucky family.
Right.
I mean,
this holiday season, one lucky family.
This holiday season, one lucky family got $1.56 million because, according to Ashley's notes, a 10-year-old ran for the baseball and just made his family rich.
Let's talk about this 10-year-old. All right, Zach Rutterman, I believe that's how you say it, shouting you out. I mean, you made your family some money.
Shmoney. Like, this is what the American dream is all about.
That's what I'm saying. This is sports. This is America. Like, the 10-year-old kid runs for the ball. It sells at auction for $1.56 million. It's America.
And he's 10.
Yeah.
Did he know that the ball was as important as it was? I'm sure his dad or someone is saying to him, like,
probably just
son,
wanted
this
the ball.
is a big ball. But yeah, I don't feel like he's thinking in his head, like, here's $1.56 million. He's just like, there's a ball here. I'm going to go grab it. Look at you now, man.
I mean, those parents really hit the jackpot with that kid. I'm not going to lie.
It's an unbelievable
Literally
story.
and figuratively.
It's an unbelievable story. Any other thoughts, feelings, concerns?
That's really all. We'll continue to stay concerns. We'll continue to stay updated and current. We said we are taking next week off. We'll see on the week after. Holiday season tough, especially with our impending travel. But if something breaks, you know that we will be on it with Alonso, Manaya, whoever else. Also, we're heading over to the land of our people. Not really, because it's not LA, but San Diego, close enough. So if anyone has any recommendations for us, we're really not going to be there for that long, but let us know.
Wait, drop us comment in the comments if there's any places to get dinner in San Diego on Christmas.
On Christmas. Should mention on Christmas.
I actually was thinking about that. I'm like, is any place going to be open?
Well, that's why we got my very Italian family up in Orange County. We got Big Phil's Brick Pizza Oven for Christmas dinner. So,
Ashley has a relative named Big Phil who has generously invited us over.
If you're from Italian or ethnic families, hit me in the comments. You know that everybody's either a big or a little something. So my dad's Little Richie. He's 56, right? But he's Little Richie.
Yo.
There's Big Phil, Little Richie.
I'm obsessed
Little
with
Davey.
Big Phil.
Am
I Big Sam or Little Fam? Little Sam.
You're gonna be obsessed with his pizza oven and his lemon trees. Anyway, we're going to find some sunshine, thank God, because we live in Syracuse. So hit us with some recommendations in San Diego if you have any.
You see two girls walking on the streets of San Diego that looks like us.
You could see us.
It just might be us. Thanks as always for joining us. Good time to say you can find us anywhere. Social media, the handle's all the same at YMetsPod. And hey, if you are interested in the college football sphere, I have said this a few times, but we do have another podcast. Hello? What's going? It's time to wrap it up. We have another podcast where we talk about football, specifically Syracuse football, which is what we cover. So if you ever want to check that out, see us talk about something different, feel free. If not, we'll see you back here for the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. Ta-ta.
Winners
Happy
get
holidays.
In eggnog.
Am I Big Sam or Lil Fam?